Great summer days in the forecast for the Great Lakes region, like in Traverse City, Michigan. We'll tell you more about that. Plus, some heavy storms are developing in Nebraska, and it could be a wet day in the southeast. More on that scenario shortly. But first, a look at the tropics, and we look at the big picture on the Atlantic side first. And once again, the bottom line is that there is not a great deal happening from the Gulf of Mexico and Caribbean out into the tropical South Atlantic. Now, over here in the eastern Atlantic, we've got some fairly impressive tropical waves rolling off the African continent. One is right here. It's just basically a low, mid-level, let's say, swirl in the low and mid-level cloudiness. You can notice it right here. There's little, if any, thunderstorm activity associated with it. Then there's another one in this vicinity with big storms coming into the western parts of Africa. That one's going to head offshore soon. Well, is anything going to develop? Maybe, but even if it did, it would be at least a week before it rolled across the Atlantic and affected the islands here. In the meantime, there is a tropical wave near the islands from Martinique and Barbados to just south of Antigua, let's say. Here's another disturbance north of Puerto Rico, a tropical wave. But because it's interacting with upper level low pressure in this vicinity, no significant organization is anticipated the next couple of days. And just simply put, the Gulf of Mexico is showing no signs of development at all at this time. Another perspective of that upper level low near Jamaica. So with the quiet conditions on the Atlantic side, let's go to the Pacific and find out the latest on Georgette, which is now a weak tropical storm with 45-mile-per-hour top sustained winds at 24.6 north and 126.2 west. Georgette moving west-northwest at 9 miles per hour, and the pressure is 1,002 millibars. Essentially, Georgette has moved into very cool water now and is basically, as you can see on this satellite picture, falling apart well off the Baja California U.S. west coast. Hawaiian Islands, no problems for you. And out in the western Pacific, well, there's a disturbed area of weather southeast of the Philippines, which may show some development. Otherwise, it continues to be a very quiet tropical season in the western Pacific, the South China Sea, and the waters east of Taiwan, where the last couple of years have been very busy, but this season has been extremely tranquil so far anyway. So back to the states. Big storms in Nebraska. Fair weather over the Great Lakes thanks to high pressure, which has moved south out of Canada. As I mentioned, Traverse City. For those of you playing golf today, it's going to be about 76 degrees, sunny, and the winds light. So boating conditions on nearby Lake Michigan should be excellent. Now the fog is thick. Parts of Kentucky, West Virginia, Ohio, and western Pennsylvania. If you're traveling through here, conditions are hazardous because of the poor visibility down near the Ohio River especially. Let's go to the northeast via satellite. Then looking at radar, we've got some wet weather right here from the Carrabassett Valley over into the Northeast Kingdom, including Berlin, New Hampshire, and into the Adirondacks near Lake Placid, some light rain. But no rain near Boston, where it's 70. 74 in New York City at the moment. About the same in D.C. It's a little cooler west of the mountains in Pittsburgh in the 60s. Got 80s now in Miami, low 70s in Atlanta, upper 70s in New Orleans, warm in Houston at 73 degrees. The scenario in the south, weak low pressure, a disturbed area, a low pressure trough, if you will, at the surface, which is simply a weak wind shift line. But with the deeply moisture-laden atmosphere, although showers are dissipating or diminishing quickly this morning over the Carolinas and Tennessee, well, once the sun comes up, begins to heat things up during the day, showers and storms will intensify quickly once again. Let's go to the northern plains. We've got some rain in northern Minnesota, parts of northwest Iowa and northern North Dakota, as well as over Nebraska, where some heavy storms are rolling east across the plains. Heaviest cells now northeast of Grand Island and southeast of Grand Island. Travelers on I-80 in Nebraska are encountering briefly heavy downpours and gusty winds. Satellite shows the bright white thunderstorm anvil tops sticking 45,000 feet into the atmosphere. So they show it very well on the infrared picture, which takes a picture of the temperature. The brighter white, the colder, the higher the cloud top. High pressure here, upper Michigan, a crisp 43 in Marquette, 59 in San Francisco. Fairly quiet weather scenario in the west. Still some leftover moisture here in the plateau region, and that means afternoon thunderstorms will be firing up. Here's your evening forecast map. Could be a storm near Flagstaff, Salt Lake City, all over the south, while it should be a nice day in Chicago, Detroit, and Cleveland. Stay tuned.
Tropical weather systems are affected by so many variables.
We constantly monitor the situation.
If someone is safer by watching the Weather Channel, that's what it's all about.
Batteries.
Video games don't just blast through your batteries.
We're looking at some large hail in northern Minnesota near International Falls and the threat of even some flash flooding in the east. More on that on Storm Watch after we check the tropical update. Now on our tropical update we can see first of all a new entry, and this is the first tropical depression this season in the Central Pacific. Now you usually don't get more than a handful in the Central Pacific. Maybe if it's a really active year you might get 4 or 5. So that's why it's so late in coming around, but it's called Tropical Depression 1C, and it is moving in a west-northwest direction at 12 miles an hour. The center of low pressure being, about 760 miles east-southeast of Hilo, Hawaii, and that was at 11 a.m. Honolulu Standard Time, which was 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, for instance, and 2 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. Winds 35 miles an hour, and pressure really not that low quite yet. But it is at a pretty low altitude or latitude, which allows it to have some waters that are just barely warm enough for tropical development. But it takes more than warm water to develop a tropical system. We could see the Big Island. We could see some clouds building up on the Kahala coast and up toward Mauna Kea. That's typical, and a lot sunnier skies on the Hilo side today. So you're having a great day on the island. But out here, over 800 miles out to sea, we have a tropical depression. You could see the rotation turning around right now and some banding, but generally the heavy rain squalls, convection as we call it, is even weakening a little bit, but it's on the east and southeast flanks and also south and southwest. And you really have to develop some tall towers of thunderstorms right around the center for this thing to get going. So we do have a distinct low pressure system. It's turning. We don't have any direct wind ratings that would indicate it would be 39 miles an hour sustained, which would be tropical storm. If it does get to that strength, it would be called Upana. And there are indications that since it's at such a low latitude, it may just strengthen into a tropical storm in the next couple of days, so we'll keep an eye on it. Another viewpoint of it in the infrared showing even less definition of the circulation right about here and the heavy rain squalls around the edges. Not a totally benevolent upper level system. We see a little bit of wind shear going on here, some high cirrus clouds being pushed off to the north and east, so not an ideal setup for development as far as the upper levels go. Water just marginally warm enough here. Now, if Hawaii were to be threatened, it would have to stay at a low latitude in warm water and then make the curve into the islands, because if it makes a beeline right for the islands, it gets into progressively cooler water, and that hardly supports development. At this point, we don't necessarily have the upper level winds that supportive of development, so we're not really overly concerned. If you do live on the Big Island and to a lesser degree the further away islands, keep posted. There could be even some heavy rain squalls when this comes in, but the current forecast is for it to go south of the Big Island, at least the center of it, and it's at least a couple of days away. Stay with us on that. Meanwhile, Georgette, which was a major hurricane down around here, 115 mile an hour winds or higher, has almost paralleled the Baja coast and now is down to a tropical depression, 35 mile an hour sustained winds. Satellite picture on that shows that it is running into cooler water. You could tell that by the low cloudiness we see here, and it's that cooler water that will be the demise of Georgette. Further south, though, south of Acapulco, Mexico, some buildups of heavy rain, but nothing that looks like a tropical depression right now. We'll keep you posted. Meanwhile, this is the trend over 100 years or so, the peak of the hurricane season from extremely late August through much of September. We haven't reached it yet. We haven't had many threats. We've had Alex, but at this point we're in a time that the threat goes up precipitously, so we'll see what happens. You want to be prepared if you live especially near the coastlines, because something could crop up in no time at all. Things are moving away from the coast, and they're not tropical developments on the east coast today. But in the Atlantic, a weak tropical wave way down south, and also, as you see on the water vapor imagery, a circulation north of about the Dominican Republic right now. And it's mainly a mid to upper level circulation. Not that we're seeing a lot of development, and there is an outside or a remote chance this could develop. Meanwhile, these are just heavy showers over the Gulf of Mexico, not a tropical development. But it's a mid to upper level circulation that could, in some rare cases, build low pressure right down to the sea surface, especially if it's warm water, which it is. So we'll keep an eye on it. Usually you need a high pressure circulation at upper levels, so this is just the opposite. But squally weather, yes, over Hispaniola. Tropical development, no, not yet. We'll let you know if there is going to be one. Meanwhile, out over the Atlantic, nothing in the immediate future. We do see a weak circulation that has only scattered high thunder showers around it, but we'll see if that develops any more convection as we go on in time. Meanwhile, back over the States, nice weather in the northeast will come to an end. We have a weather system moving up from the south, which means possibly some flash flooding, and a front which has already produced some severe weather. We have a severe threat in parts of North Dakota and Minnesota, including a severe thunderstorm watch, and we've even had some baseball-sized hail not too far from International Falls as a pretty intense thunderstorm moves in that direction. More on Weather Center.
Sunday has been a washout for parts of the southeast. Will your work week begin on a drier note? The National Outlook is ahead on Weather Center after your local forecast.
Out here, it's Monday.
And here, you know,
Friday.
and this is Friday's new Chop House Classics, served sizzling hot for a taste.
Welcome to Storm Watch and the Tropical Update. We're going to be talking about the status of what was Tropical Storm Georgette. I'll give you a clue, it's not a tropical storm anymore. Also a system to the southeast of Hawaii. We'll be talking about that and focusing on where your chances of storms are here in the U.S. But first, the Tropical Update. Let's check it out right now. Here on the Weather Channel, our first concern, Tropical Depression 1C. That's the system I was speaking of, the one that's southeast of Hilo, way far. Southeast of Hilo, 725 miles with a wind of 35 miles per hour around the center of circulation. This has been weakening considerably over the past several hours as it moves toward the west at 9 miles per hour. And even if it does become close enough to the Hawaiian Islands over the next, say, 3 days, maybe the most you'll get out of it are some rain showers as we see it now. Could be a little more because it does have a chance of slowly strengthening more. But over the next 24 hours, the latest advisory has it not strengthening at all with winds, again, of 35 miles per hour. But notice you can barely pick it out. This is the, watch this. You see that there's a bit of a rotation here? Can you see? This is about the only thing associated with it. Very little convection. These are the Hawaiian Islands, by the way, to give you the perspective. This is the big island of Hawaii. Now, this convection has nothing to do, per se, with the storms. This is another wave, if you will, on its own. This is a circulation we're talking about, and there's really not much going on. So, but we'll be watching it carefully. A very, very slow weakening, strengthening. But bear in mind, the past few hours it's been actually weakening. So we'll have to keep an eye on this. The waters are relatively warm here, though. Let's take a look at Tropical Depression Georgette. This will be the final advisory on Georgette. Kicked up some pretty good surf along the Southern California coast, but it's 785 miles southwest of San Diego now with winds 30 miles per hour. So it's gradually weakening, just becoming some wispy clouds just about, just a shadow of its former self, if you will. It used to be a hurricane as it moves toward the west-northwest at 3. There's a look at Georgette, again a tropical depression, the last advisory on it, and no big concern right now as far as intensity or strengthening or damage right now. So that's some pretty good news. Here's a look at hurricanes per 100 years in the Atlantic Basin. September 10th is the date when you add the dates all together, when that's the date most likely for hurricanes, September 10th. In other words, that's the peak day of the season, September the 10th. It grows till you get to September the 10th. Still pretty high as you go into mid-September and latter September, and still pretty healthy going into October. But we're now getting into that time where our chances of tropical storms and hurricanes increase. That's the broad picture I want you to know. We're getting into a more favorable time of the tropical season. And September the 10th happens to be the biggest day. Let's take a look at the Atlantic right now. About the only thing going on is really of any big interest is north of Puerto Rico. You see that circulation? That's a mid-level circulation. Often you need low-level circulation, though, for tropical system development. You can see it right here, but there's not much signs of low-level circulation. But it is an area of favorable upper-level winds. You see it? You can even see it more clearly. This is Puerto Rico right here. This is that circulation at the mid-levels. At the low levels, not a lot going on. But we'll be watching it carefully for you, and there is some increasing activity, convection, and rain showers with it. So that's a point of interest right now. These are all on land, this convection here. Florida, seeing some storms as well as Central America. Again, an even closer up look. Of course, the waters are plenty warm, and anything that has this type of circulation this time of the year bears very close scrutiny. And here's Puerto Rico, there's Haiti and the Dominican Republic, here's Cuba. This is known as the Greater Antilles, and this is the circulation right here. At the mid-levels, though, not at the low levels right now. And again, it's the low levels when you become extraordinarily concerned. Now, we do have another wave that's tumbling off of the coast of Africa. This is South America, by the way, and this is the leading edge of it, if you will. You can see it here. We'll be watching this too, because this time of the year, anything tumbling off the coast of Africa bears watching, and the waters are increasingly warmer, and so we'll be watching this carefully for you as these areas of convection make their journey across the Atlantic, if indeed they do hold together. But here closer to home, you can see the wet weather in the southeast. It's part of that moisture package, the one that brought 4 inches of rain to Columbus, Georgia. That same rain shield, at least part of it moving toward the north, affecting you in the mid-Atlantic region, and also a front threatening you with severe weather as we go through noon tomorrow, right here across Minnesota, getting into the northwestern part of Wisconsin. In fact, we have a severe thunderstorm watch in effect until 2 o'clock Central Time. That means there's the potential for severe weather. Indeed, there's already been severe weather. We'll talk about this during Weather Center coming up soon.
Is rain in your back-to-work forecast? A look at tomorrow's weather conditions around the nation are ahead on Weather Center after your local forecast.
With my family, I'm always cleaning the floors. Some mops I used made me bend down, get my hands wet, or were hard to wring. That was then. This is now. The new Velita floor cleaning system.